Thank you, Paula. Elizabeth, you are such a force of nature. So thank you for being that force of nature and making things happen. And for the panelists, I'm honored to be among you. And for our participants, it's also a privilege of your time. So thank you for giving us your time for us to share some thoughts. I had prepared something which I wanted to speak to, but it will be so boring if I speak to what I prepared. If I speak from my heart, maybe it will be less boring. So I will speak from my heart, and I'll speak to issues that are dear to me. And Elizabeth asked me to focus on education. And so I will start from where I began. I was educated by accident. I come from a culture in the northern part of Nigeria where girls are not supposed to go to school after the certain age of puberty. They're supposed to get married. So at the age of 10, my father gave me out in marriage. At the age of 12 or so, I'll move into the house. At the age of 11, I ran away to school, to a boarding school. Okay, my life continued to roll out. I became a lawyer by accident. I also went to teach at Harvard, I guess, by accident. I hope also here in Oxford by accident. But it's just accident of life that makes for the topic relevant for me today, the gender balance and what future we want to see, maybe for our children yet unborn. And it is within this contour of conversation that I wanted to mention 3 things that I thought is apt for this meeting. The first one is the issue of construction. When we think about gender balance or the balance of woman and man, for me, is the construction of that within a bigger picture. But let me bring it home to what I have been doing. Yes, I had been a lawyer. I had defended a lot of controversial cases. I also had been part of the effort to rescue the girls that were kidnapped by Boko Haram. So I could go on telling you narratives of how we did it. We could do that in Q&A so that I don't go into that in my 10 minutes. But more succinctly, I felt it's beyond me. If I have had these privileges of life, moving from obscurity, from a place of unknown to a global stage, for me is the giving back of it. And that is the giving back that brought in the Peace Institute that I incorporated in 2017 in the United States. And I have branches in Italy and in Nigeria. Italy, because I'm married to an Italian. And so I also trade different grounds. So I was born and bred a Muslim in the northern part of Nigeria. Came out from that tradition into a tradition of the Europeans for the past 27 years. Blessed with 2 children. So somehow by nationality, I'm still Italian. Moved to the United States. And so in the contour of this navigation, I could see the need for the balance, for gender, for the role of women and men on one hand. And when I talk about construction, I was talking about construction in a bigger picture. So when you think about that, you cannot put it in one box, isn't it? I can tell you about that in my native country.
¿Por qué no la veo?
And I could
¿Qué nombre has puesto?
The role change in my European stage, and by the time I went elsewhere, the role changed. But beyond the changing of the role is how do we balance it and how do we work within it and with it. And it's a matter of time, a matter of space, and a matter of context. And so in the Q&A, we could go down into this road of context, the time, and the space. But just to drop that, I also wanted to make some few remarks on identity. So when you talk about the gender balance of man and woman and the rethinking the society, you also have to think about the identity of those people involved. Like I say in the Q&A, we could really touch this out a little bit. But on top of these layers of identity is issues of race, issues of class, and issue of political, and I always call it the political is personal and the personal is political. And so how do you navigate those spaces? In traditional society where I come from, the gender balancing is not as what I saw elsewhere. And I am more comfortable to speak to my own traditional understanding of gender role. I'm here in the feminist department, and recently I've been bunging myself into understanding all this definition of terms when it comes to gender and their roles and their performances and their essentialities. I don't want to bore you because I don't want you to go to sleep on my talk. But I just want to add that it also has to do with power. There's a power dynamic to the balance, the gender balance we are speaking about, men and women working together. What is the power dynamic between those two binaries or multi-identities that I hope we can speak to more? There are common themes that sort of come up for the most part for these three different categories I mentioned, Europe, United States, and my village, is that for both parties, everybody will need to have a skin in the game, isn't it? You have to have a skin in the game. If you want to create that change, it should start with us. So we need to be part of that change. We need to really put our skin in that game. I think there is a need for practical skills to be developed on both sides. Paying attention to operation and vulnerability, because when we romanticize the idea of balance, it's just a romance. We have to put a name to it. We have to call it out. And part of the calling out is that if we want this gender balance to happen, in reality, we have to put in some effort in terms of the skills and development of each of these genders so that we can now be at par to be able to participate. There is a changing balance of this gender. And I always speak to it as having a dialogue. How do we have a dialogue? A dialogue within facts, a dialogue within a political setting, and a dialogue within intents. So this dialogue becomes very relevant when we are thinking more of how to move it to the next step. Here I want to drop this, that understanding the politics of knowledge is important. So we need to understand that politics of knowledge, because if we are there, and it can be any knowledge, it cannot be not just the knowledge of the professor, no. It's the knowledge of the villager in the village. So every single knowledge becomes relevant in pushing this agenda forward. I mentioned the power structure of dominance and the distribution of resources. It's not even. No, it's not even. We want to ask for this balance at every single level. We need to push that resources even. We will not get there, but it doesn't hurt to push it. So I want to encourage that we consider that issue of resources and how we can take it to the next level. That when we see the global statistic, how many % of the women have that resources in control, and to be able to change that dynamic of power. Because you cannot change that dynamic without the resources. So we need to consider, we need to engage, and I'm talking more to the men now. We can't do it without them. So we need the men to engage. But they also have to unlearn their privileges. And it's not an easy thing. We will not expect them to do that so easily. Power is good. And when there is a lot of power, it's very, very good. So,
ahora sí.
Corruption, yeah.
I'll rather intentar entrar con ese correo también, ¿vale? Si no puedo, ya me disculparé.
Okay, so back to what I was saying. I know there's an interruption because of
HAUWA,
our
please,
friend.
can you
She will get
ask
there.
to switch off the
Yeah,
microphone? Sorry.
I would like to ask to all the participants and guests to mute yourself so that we can leave space to our dear guest, HAUWA. Thank you very much, all. Thank you. HAUWA, please.
Okay, I'll round up. we have to move on, and we have Q&A. I really love the Q&A because it brings the best out of us. But I was trying to talk about the dominancy on power on one hand, but the ability of the men to also not only work with us, but to know the power of their privileges and to unlearn that power. Because it is about learning, unlearning, and relearning of those privileges. And I want to encourage, as we move on, I'm sure it's beyond today's conversation, that we should add, and I'm sure it's there, so we will underscore it a little bit more, each of us ability to learn, to unlearn, and to relearn, to be, to become, and to re-become. And that helps to make us stronger. And I want to finally say something about the world ahead of us. It's no longer what it used to be. The world has been redefined by algorithms. The world has been redefined by artificial intelligence. The world has been redefined by social media. And we have to be ahead. We want to make change happen. We need to be 2 steps ahead of it. And how do we do it? I want to suggest that with Elizabeth, power and force of nature, and with Paula at her side, you must have done that already. Identify all those our Nobel Peace warriors that have gotten Nobel Peace Prize on those areas, and people that have no Nobel Peace Prize, that are unknown, and bring them together on a small round table and tease out how do we become 2 steps ahead of technology, of information, that we are not consumed by it, rather it's the opposite. And so for me, that is one way I think that we can now take the further step to the future for our generation yet unborn. So beyond all of us, I want to suggest finally that there is a power of one in each of us, but there is a stronger power of many, irrespective of our race, religion, culture, gender. There is a force that unites us together, a powerful force, and that is our humanity and our human dignity and the worth of each person present here and beyond. We should harness it and make it stronger, and together we will make it happen as one, as a power of collective together. Thank you. Looking forward to Q&A.